Bucky? What? What are you doing? All right, we're getting started. All right. Let's get started real quick because this little man is taking up. You're taking up a lot of my attention. I'm trying to prepare for the show, and you're sitting around being adorable, and so very relaxed. Hi, chat room. Welcome to the show. It's Al Sparks Mornings, Megaworldwiide. And this little fella, what are you doing? What have you been doing? Would you just flopping around looking all cute on the floor and stuff, walking precariously across edges? Uh-oh, Biden. He's a monster. This is Bucky, everyone. Bucky, good to see you. He is completely comfortable just hanging out here, like, until my arms go numb. Yeah, I know, that's the fan. Yeah, that's the ceiling fan. Yes, you're right, it's almost never on. You're right, I'm replacing it. This is true. It doesn't go aesthetically with the room. It's been there since we moved in. Yeah, I get it. Okay, here you go. Can I set you over here? Can you annoy Maddie for a second? Hold on. There you go. Yeah, go chase Maddie for a minute. Oops, hold on. It's just one of those mornings. It's one of those mornings where there's so much going on, and yet the cats are like, "Hey, the world is it's a crazy place, ladies and gentlemen. The world is wackadoodle right now, and as your cat, it is my responsibility to rein you in, keep you from." I look smaller in this room than I should. Excuse me, I have to do a little feng shuiing of my OBS set in the new cabin, / old cabin. I've used this once before, but I felt like it today since it's just us. I figured we'd be out in the cabin in the woods. Yeah, that's much better. This works better now that my shape is finally coming back. My left arm is getting close to normally healed. I was able to bench press, like, for real a week ago for the first time in almost a year. That was nice. I mean, it's still overcompensating. You can see the inside of this, but we could talk about that later. That's just morning stuff. The other thing, too, is, let's see if I can bring up my chat room where I can see it with some level of regularity. There is a lot of what they would colloquially, excuse me, it's early. When you have a tongue this big, it just sometimes gets in the way. Referred to as turmoil in the world. Yes, and we will get to the thing about Iran. The supreme leader of Iran is apparently hiding in a bunker right now. Boy, does it sound familiar. Birds of a feather flocking together, hiding in their underground bunker. So let me grab a couple of things on that. And it wasn't just that they killed 30,000 protesters. It is that they did it in 2 days. Let's see if I can find. Yeah. That would be this situation. There you go. And I'll shrink this down so it looks a little better. There you go. So you can read it. Iran executes protest. This nice typo there, guys. Execute. Iran executes protesters. I guess English, direct translation being what it is. In hospital beds with fears of the death toll now surpassing 30,000 in ongoing crackdown. Protesters have been found with gunshot wounds to the heads whilst in their hospital gowns. There was a story of a young man. It was told at the UN by one of the anti-regime people who spoke, that a family was looking for their son. He had disappeared. He'd gone out to be a part of the protests and never come home. So they went looking for him. They went to hospitals, didn't find him. They found lots of dead people, but they didn't find their son. Then they went to this big, notorious morgue where the regime tends to dump dead bodies and then charge you like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for every bullet it took to kill your kid or your relative. And they went around, looking, unzipping all the body bags, and they found their son, and he was still alive. He'd been laying in there with a bullet wound for 3 days, pretending to play dead until he thought he could be sure he could escape. But there were soldiers all around the place or whatever, and he was afraid they would finish the job. So he stayed hidden in a body bag for 3 days. Yeah. So do we have rough shit happening in the United States? Absolutely. Do we have a job to do making sure that our administration and those people get the comeuppance they deserve in the future and all that kind of... Absolutely. But this is an order of magnitude higher. And this is going on, am I in Tucker's log cabin? Yeah, that's why. He likes, I don't know if you've seen his log cabin, but all the wood he likes apparently is small.
I like wood.
You know what I mean?
Deeper and longer.
And this is a real log cabin. This is, there's no fire right now. I don't know what the fuck AI was thinking with this stack of firewood. You do know that's not where you, never mind. All right. So 30,000. The last time there was a civilian slaughter of that magnitude on record was when the Germans killed 30,000 Jews in the Ukraine. Jews 2 days. Let's see if I can find that one right there. And Babi Yar, which was, the Babi Yar massacre in 29th of September 1941, is the deadliest single operation by the Germans. Let's see if they get, Babi Yar, more than 33,000 Jewish people were murdered in 2 days. They just systematically went house to house. It said, notices written in Russian, German, and Ukrainian were posted around the city of Kyiv, ordering the city's Jewish population to gather at Babi Yar. Babi Yar is a ravine located on the outskirts of Kyiv. I would like to say for the record that if you ever find yourself in an authoritarian grab and a regime is taking over your country or an invading force is going, and they come and tell you to meet in a valley, don't. It's kind of like, I have this thing, and I'm curious how many people, that I think at one point, probably in 1975, if somebody came into your house and said, I'm just here to rob you, I'm going to tie you up and separate you, I'll put the dad in one room and the mom in another and the kids in another room, and it'll all be fine, and I'm just here to take your stuff. People in 1975 probably would have gone, okay, just don't hurt us and whatever. Okay. those days, if you haven't watched enough true crime, I don't know what's wrong with you. And the number of serial killers and serial rapists and serial monsters that have been out there, there's just no fucking way. I have already told my family that you get out. I will take every round in the gun or kill the person in the process. You get out. Go stay behind me and get out the door. And don't come back. Go to another building. Go to the nearest house where you can call the police and do that. Don't look back. Don't worry about me. End of conversation. Like, there is no way I'm letting you tie me up. You know, it's just not happening. Like, I don't know how anybody would just go, oh, okay, I trust this situation, right? Anymore. Because, BTK, any number, like, forget it. Just forget it. Sorry. Yeah, Richard Speck and the nursing students, absolutely. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Just know that. And so it might have at one point been a completely reasonable Jesse James kind of thing. Like, we're here just to rob the bank. We're going to tie you guys up. And if you were in a bank, I would almost buy it. If you were in a public place like a mall or some shit like that, there'd almost be a reasoning behind it, right? Because it's not your money, it's not your stuff, and you're not defending it. But the minute they are like, I'm taking your kids into another room, like, fuck that. Like, it's over. I'm dying that day. Or we all are, or they are, or whoever, forget it. Forget it. And in this particular instance, if they ask you to report with your family to a ravine, that's because it's the same reason you want to be on the hilltop in a battle. That's because it's easier to shoot down into an area and you can't get away. That's exactly what happened at Babi Yar. Right? On Monday, September 29th, you were to appear at 7 a.m. with your possessions, money, documents, valuables, and warm clothing at Dorogorzychya Street, next to the Jewish cemetery. Like, come on. For fuck's sake. Failure to appear will be punishable by death. Well, guess what? Appearing was punishable by death. That's what that is. They were led to believe that by gathering in the ravine at the ordered time, they'd be resettled elsewhere in the country and taken to safety. Instead, they were murdered in one of the single deadliest events of the Holocaust. Only 29 people were known to have survived. She was 3 years old. 18 of her relatives were killed at Babi Yar. All the Jews decided to go because they thought they would be evacuated by train at the railway station, as the railway station was nearby. Yeah, the cemetery was closer. Like, no fucking way. But even back then, you're like, okay. All the Jews decided to go. Okay, nobody could possibly assume there would be a mass execution. You kind of could, considering the rhetoric of the Germans at the time. But I understand what they thought, especially because it was the Russians, in theory, still running things, right? Yeah. So, needless to say, the Iranian executions are the biggest mass murder of civilians by a controlling regime, I guess, because Lord knows, what the numbers are in Sudan, right? There's tens of thousands, and again, that we're keeping track of. At a certain point, it just enrages me that nobody's giving a shit. We'll get to Sudan in a minute, but apparently, the Ayatollah is hiding in a bunker. Currently, he has handed over power to his, I've heard different stories, either one of his sons or his nephew, so that the sons don't get killed. You know what I mean? You take your sons into the bunker with you, and the nephew's like, what the fuck did I do? They end up being the bullet catcher for your family and the regime. Why is this? I've got to say, this is a little silly that this screen is up this high. I gotta fix this so I'm not staring at the goddamn roof the entire time while I'm doing the show. By the way, hit the like, share the show. It's Hal Sparks, Megaworldwiide. All right, there's this. Let's slide this up here. Excuse you, your holy eminence, you dickheadedness. Yeah, this will be a little better, I think. Insofar as just being able to, like, so my eye line isn't through the fucking roof. Yeah, that'll work. So, he's in a bunker right now, and he's not alone, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, Xi Jinping also in a bunker. When is it Trump's turn again? That's what I want to know. When indeed. Hold on one second. Open this up. Option is command. This guy. Oh, here we go. Open preview projector, new window. Thank you. Put this up here. Excellent. These are all the things I would be doing in the morning, but for having a cat on my left foot, that if I stepped to the side, I would step on him, and therefore, there you go. So, yeah. So rumor has it is, okay. Remember how I said they were jockeying for who's going to be next in line for Xi Jinping's job, and there was, let's see, I'm gonna grab this guy. Yeah. And I was like, it was this fight between him and a guy named Zhang Youxia. Remember that? Remember when I brought this up months ago? Why is she in hiding? She is in hiding is because he tried, and this is, we don't have a ton of information. Go away. This is silliness. Maybe I have to shrink this down. Command minus. There we go. Command plus. There we go. Go with the stop it. Anyways, this is Zhang Youxia. Let me get a better picture of him. Hold on one second. Here's a good Lord. I have to say, does anybody else have a hostility towards the paywall stuff that happens on most news things these days? Immediately. I mean, I do appreciate the whole, you've got a certain number of, free things. Yeah, here you go. China's top general under investigation for alleged violation. Okay, let me state this as clearly as I fucking can. That's all bullshit. The story is, and this is, you can literally tell how much this is bullshit by the weight of the charges against him. Okay, so is he charged with? Let me see. I'm gonna change this filter too because I don't need this. Turn this off. Pink. There we go. Is he charged with sedition and plotting a coup and blah blah blah? Which is largely, I got to tell you, what he's actually been up to. No. Is he charged with being insufficiently loyal to the party and blah, blah, which is another language they use to line somebody up against a wall and blow their brains out? No. He's charged with leaking nuclear weapons secrets to the United States, which, for the record, is stupid. It's supposed to be something that makes the Chinese public pearl clutch. It's considered the line beyond the line when you talk about it. Oh my God, he leaked nuclear weapons secrets. Okay, first of all, the United States wouldn't be interested in the technology of Chinese nuclear weapons at all. First of all, we know. That's the thing about nuclear weapons, is that they're very big and cumbersome. They have a radiation signature most of the time. If you even test them, they know where they are. That's not the issue. And China does not have any nuclear subs that can get anywhere near the United States. They have some silent running, basically electric generator subs, but they're not big enough to carry nukes. I suppose they could dirty bomb their way across if they wanted to create if the sub itself could be made to explode, but that's not what they're doing. It's just silly. What they have are these big diesel chug-a-lugs that make a shit ton of noise and can't go very far, quite frankly. That's why China, in all this, this constant belief that it's a quote-unquote superpower, a world superpower, which is its goal, isn't really true because their Navy just doesn't have the legs. They don't have nuclear powered subs. They don't have nuclear powered supercarriers. And so they got to refuel the things. So they're always on a tether. So their biggest supercarrier can only go like 500 miles out to sea before you have to follow it with 3 fucking fuel boats and refill it. And then it can go another 500 miles. Like, it's a little stupid. And that's why they have fuel stations all through the South China Sea. And that's why they want that little Filipino island that they've been fighting with them about, is because they want to park basically a gas pump there. I'm not kidding. Okay, so, but this is one of the guys, Zhang Youxia is the guy I've been talking about, how, like, there are 2 people that have been kind of seen as next in line to Xi Jinping. And Xi Jinping his health is failing. He's probably had, 2 strokes this year, whatever, and there's blood in the water. And so the other guy, he feels like, because he's purged all this guy's allies within the party, he feels like that guy, he's stiff-armed. That guy's not going to make his move before Xi Jinping actively steps down in some sort of dignified way and then fucks off to Russia like everybody else to bunk with Assad. Or move to Kazakhstan to some sort of Barbara Streisand like compound that they built for him, or that his wife, by the way, that his wife arranged for them to build for him, right? But the one guy that could take a poke at him before he's ready to go is this guy, Zhang Youxia. And Zhang Youxia is basically the head of the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, which, by the way, and the CMC, which is the Chinese Military Commission, which runs the PLA, which it's like the Joint Chiefs, okay? China traditionally has 7 people on their Joint Chiefs, effectively, including Xi. He's considered the leader of the Joint Chiefs, for lack of a better phrase. America has a separation between the Joint Chiefs and the president, and they interact, but they're not part of the same decision-making process. The Joint Chiefs are an advisory council to the president. They don't make singular decisions on behalf of the president or group decisions. The CMC, because of communism and the illusion of communism that they have over there, they get together and they supposedly make these decisions. Now, everybody knows that Xi Jinping just tells them what to do and whatever. And a lot of these guys bristle about it because they're living a lie all the time and they have to like stand there like dickheads and listen to somebody that they consider intellectually their inferior. This has been a problem since Xi took over. But Zhang Youxia is the son of a princeling, which means he was, one of the heads of the Communist Revolution, one of the people who were like the leaders of it. He's considered royalty. That I don't like. Again, they use this princeling term about them, and yet they're supposed to be fucking. They're supposed to be like a communist. Everybody's equal. That's the one thing about communism I think that's, in theory, appealing to folks is. And I'm gonna move my screen. There you go, so you guys can see this stuff on the online. This guy right here, Zhang Youxia. I'm fixing it on the on the Instagram, that there shouldn't be any royalty. There shouldn't be anything close to royalty, certainly in a democracy, but definitely not in a communist society. I mean, it was bad enough that we had George H.W. Bush and then George W. Bush, and that Trump is even, like people in maggotry are even throwing around the idea of Ivanka one day or Don Jr. or some ridiculous shit. It's like, no. You can't say that people in government don't know how to do anything right and then invest your loyalty in their kids because it's some sort of skill they developed by being around it. It's just ridiculous. But in this particular case, it's a direct lie that the entire country is built on, right? That we all serve the people and the people serve us and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this guy, he's from that line. He's a big mucky muck because his dad was a big mucky muck. He also is considered a war hero. Now, why is he considered a war hero? Because of China's Vietnam. Everybody knows about America's Vietnam. what a lot of people forget about was that in like 1978 through 1981, China tried their own Vietnam. They wanted it. And I've talked many times about how you can get this, well, shit, I even have some here. I'll show you. Hold on. There's this medicine. Where is it? I know it's around here somewhere. Here it is. It's a blood coagulating spray that was this powder that the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong were using. They used a powder. They obviously didn't have a lovely spray. They would pour it into gunshot wounds, and it would cause the blood to coagulate, and it would heal and shut down the wound quicker. Why did I get all blurry all of a sudden? What was this about? But in that process, it made them very difficult to fight. Okay, there we go. All I had to do was call up the software. It's so weird. Anyways, because their soldiers could get back into battle, especially if it wasn't a mortal wound or I guess a mortal wound, never mind. But if it was a very, it was a bad wound, where it destroyed bone and whatever, then no. But if they had any kind of a flesh wound, and there were tons of those fighting in the jungle, they could stop the bleeding quicker and get back in the fight faster than anybody. And so we have similar things like that right now. You'll see it, and if you've watched Designated Survivor, any of those shows, or FBI, even sometimes they'll have these packs and they shake them up and then they pour them in the wound. Shooter, I think he uses one. That's pretty common now, but then it was like a holy shit technology. Okay, so Vietnam. And forgive my junky pronunciation on this right now, is Yunnan, and in Chinese, and Yunnan is a different province. I'm exaggerating the pronunciation so you guys can tell the difference, because there's a reason why this matters. Yunnan versus Yunnan. Yunnan is Vietnam. Yunnan is the province of China, and so the Chinese sell Yunnan Baiyao, this white powder for blood coagulation that helps wounds heal, in China as Yunnan Baiyao. So they switch the spelling of it on there so that it, like in the English especially, so that Vietnam doesn't get the credit. They do. And part of it was because they took it when they fought the Vietnamese. They learned about it there. So China had its own run at the little history lesson this morning. Let's see. Now moving with Tucker, right? Excuse me, Tucker's wood is tiny. Mine is large. This isn't wood. These are logs, baby. Come on. All right. So, there we go. So, the Sino-Vietnamese War, which is started in 1979. Let's see if I can find you something along these lines. So, the Chinese have a lovely memory of how this went, but it effectively. So in a struggle with the Soviet Union for the leadership role of the global communist movement, the Chinese Communist Party waged a full-scale war of aggression against communist Vietnam in February and March of 1979. Vietnam had abandoned Beijing and joined Moscow as a mutual defense treaty ally and invaded and toppled Chinese Maoist puppet government, the Khmer Rouge, in Cambodia. The war was also triggered by an internal CCP power struggle. Check your calendar right now, ladies and gentlemen. For that kind of stuff. Deng Xiaoping wanted to consolidate his control over the PLA to finally force the CCP General Secretary Hua Guofeng, Mao's outmaneuvered chosen successor, to cede supreme power to him. It was called, and this is very Russia, Ukraine war, it was dubbed the self-defensive counterstrike against Vietnam. Okay, you're going, wait a minute. Did Vietnam attack China and therefore they had to attack them in self-defense? No, it was a preemptive self-defense. Why'd you shoot him? Because he was going to punch me eventually, Your Honor. Why? Because I'm an asshole and I deserve it, right? Like, because he was going to punch me. Why? Because he knew I was going to punch him first. So wait, so he knew you were going to punch him first. So you think he was going to punch you first, and before he punched you, you shot him. Yes, Your Honor. That's the case against Vietnam. From the Chinese perspective. It sounds very Russia-Ukraine. Quite obviously. So, clearly, you know, a pile of shit. So now we'll move on to where is it? Bump. What's going on in Minneapolis and Minnesota? So there is a Temu version of this shit that is happening in the United States. Donald Trump, in his attempt to be the Temu Antichrist, I suppose he's attempting to be the Antichrist and therefore is simply becoming, because he is a failure. He will always be a failure. He's a fuck up, and no one should ever underestimate Donald Trump's ability to fuck up a free lunch. Okay? So, Kristi Noem caught shit because the shooting of the guy who with the gun is clearly not, like, her defense of it was very Trumpy, quite frankly, that, you know, he was armed or whatever. And now that there's video of the gun being removed, it all happening in a split second, and bad training and no body cams and all that kind of stuff. The fact that you have to rely on like bystanders filming it is an action. It will always escalate the situation. This is one of the reasons why, by the way, if you'll notice, since body cams came in, the material circumstance of policing has not changed all that much. The number of shootings, the number of people using cars as weapons and all that kind of stuff that happens with police officers has not changed numerically at all, which points to, by and large, in the 17,000 plus police departments and law enforcement groups that are in the United States, from, you know, state on down, there, and including U.S. Marshals, which is one of the reasons why the U.S. Marshals aren't invited to this party by Trump and his pals anymore, because they wear body cams. That in that process, people are seeing, I don't know if you guys have seen the flood chat room of body cam footage that is now all over YouTube. Anytime there is a questionable interaction between the police, anytime that there's a shooting or whatever that's being investigated, one of the biggest defenses, and as a matter of fact, you can tell it's hinky if they say it was off or the footage is not available. You can almost guarantee this is one of the situations where something was either poorly executed by bad training and stupid orders and an idiot who shouldn't be holding a firearm, who was probably kicked off another force and all that kind of shit. Or the uppers don't like how it looked or something temporarily and they're dragging their feet because they know it's wrong. But the volume of body cam footage that is now on YouTube is incredible. Like it is, there's been an order of magnitude of it being dumped on there. And this is because anytime it's now a good defense for police departments where they can go, look, here's what actually happened. And here's 3 different body cam views of what happened, right? Instead of just one, and we're only releasing the one we like and all that kind of shit, right? And it's exactly why Customs and Border Patrol and ICE in particular should be wearing body cams. Now, I'm guessing that, like, Customs and Border Patrol, when they're dealing with a volume of people coming through, they rely on the cameras in the places they are. No Democrat in the White House has ever disarmed the American people. Yes, but a Republican has. Right. And that's the other thing. That's, you know how I keep telling you, anytime you see a gap in the fucking concrete in the wall that they built in their defense of Donald Trump, your responsibility is to stick a crowbar in that and wiggle it back and forth. Right. There is a reason why you can be completely open. Video footage is the only thing that got Chauvin convicted. He'd be on the streets. I agree. Although Chauvin's real crime, I don't think was ever tried, because the real thing that all four of them should have gone down for, not just Chauvin, was denying medical attention. And you'll notice that is if you see any of the body cam footage where the police are defending themselves, and yes, we had a person who pulled a gun or a knife, or they tried to run us over with their car and all that kind of stuff. They have no problem going, here's all four officers' body cams. You can see the entire situation from one of these angles. We also are going to give you ring cam footage if we can. That's what you do when you're honest. And that happens increasingly now. Right? So, all law enforcement agents not lawfully undercover should have to wear a body cam. I completely agree. Yes. No matter what that law is, especially if it's, if they're engaging in civilians, no matter what. Like if you're going into an apartment building and you know there's someone awful in one of the apartments, that means everybody else in the other apartments, you have no evidence of them being awful, and therefore you should have a body cam that lets you know how you interacted with those people as well. Right? So that you can't claim that somebody else who just thought their neighbor across the hall was a nice guy, but it turns out he's got a kid trapped in a fucking closet. If that person is misaligned and attacks you or whatever, or you have to push back on them, you've got evidence of that as well. So across the board, body cam footage has been a great equalizer in these situations. It has also opened up the fact that I think people are more aware of, and if you ever want to go down a fucking rabbit hole, go look at, and I would charge anybody with doing this that has, kind of preconceptions about how policing operates, because it's not even the stuff that you see at the end whenever the incident happened. What you need to watch is the 20 minutes leading up to it, which is crucial in this social media environment that we're in. That said, there is a reason why Trump doesn't want the body cam, he doesn't want body cam footage from the ICE agents. And it has very little to do with evidence of cruelty, because I would argue that Donald Trump likes the cruelty, that Donald Trump wants the cruelty. It is the only thing that gives him like a spark amongst the maggots online. That they treated these are bad people, and they're getting treated like bad people should be treated, instead of they are innocent defendants until they are found guilty, which is how our system works. He hates that. It is the biggest thing that he shares with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin and the Ayatollah of Iran and fucking Javier Milei and, the president of Nicaragua and all these other countries. That's what he shares. His remaining base loves it. That's exactly right. And so that's why the Portland thing totally fucking deflated. Because when people started showing up in like dinosaur uniform, like inflatable dinosaur outfits and shit like that, they, and by the way, I totally want a dinosaur uniform now that I think of it. It went away. It stopped being a thing. It became ridiculous. And even if they tackled someone like that, they look stupid. They look like Ace Ventura when he punches out the bird mascot at the end of the movie. Okay? It takes away that fire. Now, why does he need it? Why does he need the cruelty? Why does he need them to stand up? And I pointed out, I read on Saturday on the radio the names of child molesters and rapists and murderers and attempted murderers and drug dealers and potential terrorists, just like Trump does with his whole, like, look at this guy, he's a terrible guy, huh? He's a bad guy, huh? And the stuff that Homan does. The difference was the list that I read was of equal length, of equal depth as far as the people that were removed. But they were all removed during the Biden administration without shutting down half a fucking city or storming down the goddamn street like you're playing Call of Duty. So the question remains, and I gotta tell you, like, why the big show? I've said this many times that when anybody, and Josh Brolin, I hope you're listening. The only reason you have to be a good salesman is if your product sucks. If you have to be the greatest salesman, I mean, a good salesman works their job. But yeah, the only reason you have to be the greatest salesman in the world is because your product sucks. If your product was halfway fucking decent, it sells itself. You just guide the person to it. They may not be aware of it. They may not be aware of all the features of it. And you're informing them and then trying to guide them between, maybe they have two things that are relatively equal to choose from. And so you're trying to get them to choose your thing. That's what a salesman does. And it's a legit profession. Josh Brolin said that he met Trump. I think he said he even considers him a friend, which makes sense that Trump would be friends with Thanos. Maybe it was method acting when he took that role, and he was just bonding with the guy. But he said Trump was the greatest salesman he'd ever met. And to me, that said to me, oh, you mean he's a bullshit artist, and you were impressed by it because he's wealthy. If he talked the exact same way, but he hadn't been born into wealth, you'd have never met the fucking guy. If Donald Trump's father hadn't built a little fiefdom in New York, Josh Brolin would have never fucking met Donald Trump. He'd be little Donnie on the block in some shitty part of Queens. So, yeah. So anyways, why does he need it? I'll tell you why. Because the numbers aren't there. If you need, that's what he's selling to his people. He is selling, we're taking these bad guys, wow, slap them around like an 80s cop movie. And why do you do that? Because there aren't that many of them. There's not only not that many awful, dangerous, murderous, psychopath immigrants in the country, and there are some to be sure, because there's 340 fucking million people in the world. This is the richest country in the world. There's 340 million people in this country, and this is the richest country in the world, and everybody, like, it's a bug light for all kinds of people. People who want a future and a job and safety and security for their family, and those who would take advantage. And those are very separate human beings. This is the distinction I try to bring up with autogynephiles and the trans community. The trans community is real. Trans people deserve protection. They deserve, as a minuscule minority, every safety and protection that every other American gets, and an understanding of their circumstance that goes beyond the normal stressors of another human being. So being gentle and respectful to a trans person is a moral value. But an autogynephile is what BTK was, which is somebody who gets a sexual fetish feeling out of dressing up as a woman and often has violent or they have violent attitudes towards women because of all kinds of psychological mix-up, and towards the men who protect and care for them, and other trans people, legit trans people. They have a hostility towards them. So if you see somebody throwing shit around and yelling at somebody to honor their pronouns and threatening people behind a counter at a fucking GameStop, the chances are you're dealing with an autogynephile and not a trans person. And what happens is, trans people end up bearing the burden of autogynephiles. Okay? They get that weight on them, and that is not fair. That is unfair to trans people to assume that they're all the same, that anybody who even says they are is. That's why self-identification and those kind of things is damaging to the trans community as far as their reputation, because anybody can do it, and when anybody can do it, awful people will show up to take advantage. So the same thing is, if you have a big system with a lot of money and a lot of opportunity, there are going to be people who come here to take advantage of or join in that opportunity, which I would argue most immigrants are doing. And then you will have the awful. So the awful is going to show up. They're always going to be there, and there is nothing wrong. There is nothing racist. There is nothing dismissive or degrading to go after the awful people in a community and respectfully try to deal with the reality of another community that they seem to be aligned with. What Trump does is take the entirety of that community. He does exactly what I'm talking about with autogynephiles and trans people, and he gloms them all together. Not because he's worried about the awful people, because quite frankly, a bunch of his fucking friends are that way, from Jeffrey Epstein and all of the co-conspirators of that guy, but also the world leaders that he takes after. Like he literally truth sinkholed a post about how he respects the Ayatollah for not killing people. Literally, while the guy is killing 30,000 innocent civilians on the streets of Iran. So the idea that he's like hates the bad guys is horseshit. He hates poor bad guys because they have nothing to offer him. That's what that's about. But he loves those people because he hates, with equal measure, poor people who want their shot of any sort. Inside the United States, outside the United States, coming to the United States, leaving, it doesn't matter. If you are, anything below the upper 5%, he has automatic disdain for you. Automatic disdain. And he'll use people like that, but he won't hang out with them. When he invites MAGA supporters to Mar-a-Lago, they're all crypto millionaires and real estate shitheads. He's not inviting the run-of-the-mill. Even those 4 women he talks about all the time, their husbands let them go to all these rallies. Remember that? Okay, that's because those women are independently wealthy, because their husbands are really rich. That's why he likes them and then invite them to one Mar-a-Lago thing, but only one. The rest of them, they just show up at the thing and off they go. But these women can afford to fuck off for long periods of time and go wherever. So, that's not a working class person. That's not a person who has to be at a job on Monday. So everybody below that line is chaff, right? And he's separating the wheat from the chaff. He thinks he's wheat, which is the hilarious part. But in this, the problem that he has is twofold. One is the vast majority of immigrants who come here are looking for work. And the people that barnacle on top of it, like the Somali community, something in the order of 250,000 people, about 100 of them have been engaged in this fraud scheme, which sounds about right as far as who can get out of Somalia and come to the United States, especially during COVID. The people that could afford to go all the way across the ocean, come bring all their shit and their money and sneak in and pay a coyote tens of thousands of dollars to get into the country, or use an asylum claim and a relative that became a naturalized citizen to get in. That's a different class of people. These would normally be Trump's friends. Except they're, I guess, too brown, but whatever. But everybody else came here because Somalia sucks and it's dangerous and there's clan fighting amongst, I think, 7 different clans in Somalia. It's fucking dangerous. And if you could get your family out of there to a place where they'd be safer, you would, right? So, in that, Trump has had this, in this story he's been telling this entire time, that poor people, from hordes of poor people coming to the country isn't scary enough for maggots anymore. I'll tell you why. Because half of these, upper class yabos that he hangs out with have Hispanic nannies or people that they brought in from other countries, from the Philippines or from India, either working as employees under the table through a paid for H-1 visa, a sponsored H-1B visa, or on an au pair program for a couple of years, and they're not scared of them. They're just not. They're not as scary as they used to be. It used to work. You scare the shit. Oh my God, these fucking poor people, right? That used to be it. Yeah, their wives, exactly. After that, have you guys been watching the au pair trial thing, the murder trial? Anybody watch that shit? Where the guy set up this elaborate scheme to kill his wife by hiring a dude, luring a dude off a fetish website to make him think that his wife wanted to be sexually assaulted. That was her fantasy. And under her name, and then setting up this thing where he could just surprise the guy at the house and shoot the guy and kill his wife. So it looked like that guy killed his wife, and because his wife brought him over to the house for hard sex, and he killed him, and then he runs in and hero guy shoots the bad guy, right? Have you seen this? Okay. That dude's, he first of all, he was an IRS agent, which is hilarious considering how Republicans feel about it. But clearly, he started having an affair with his Brazilian au pair, his Brazilian nanny, and plotted this stupid plan. But anyways, they're just not scared. They don't fear the au pairs coming over and people working in hospitality or people working in old folks' homes or fucking sous chefs and shit like that. As a matter of fact, they know, like everybody else knows, that part of the economy is reliant on these people, right? They know this. That's what happened when they raided the fucking farm and Trump was like, how about we just do an honor system? Like, you can hire all the illegals you want, and if something goes bad, what? So this is, I only used Yabos because of an episode of Blackadder, but yeah. Because I think this young guy describes, like Pitt, the junior or whatever, describes Blackadder as an upper class Yabo, or his boss as an upper class Yabo, which I like. Anyways, so Trump, farmers, immigrants, honor system, blah blah blah. Okay. Yeah, this is fucking. And by the way, maggots by and large hated this. And rightly so. This is just, 80%, 70% of Americans in the early 1900s made their living through farming in one way or another, either by supplying their own food and selling some of it and then doing another job. This was the rural community, basically. Either farmed them for their own food or sold it, or both. Now 3% do, because of efficiency and machinery and all that kind of stuff. And when you get into efficiency and machinery, people will incorporate around these kind of things because it becomes a clearer, like there's a direct road to like sustained profitability and understanding of it. So you can start investing in it instead of this like, boy, I hope it fucking rains, which is what it was forever. Once you remove the boy, is it going to rain or not? And you have satellites in the air, it suddenly gets a lot more predictable, and therefore it becomes investable. That's why none of these oil companies want to fucking go into Venezuela, because it's not predictable. And the last time they said they were predicting, they predicted it would be fine, it didn't work. Okay, so this was one of the things, and this is why the violence. This is why Trump, and I can't stress this enough, this is why Trump needs the violence. He needs it because the numbers aren't there. There are not 25 to 35 million people, as I've said, that came across the border under Biden administration and stayed in the country and are skulking around. And there's certainly not an army of fucking, military-aged males who happen to be psychopaths, blah, 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 and all work for MS-13 as runners and gunners. It's just materially absurd. It's always been absurd. I hear this a fucking absurd number every day from one of these maggots. They just parrot this shit out. And the obvious question is, where are they? If there's masses of people here, why can't you fucking find them? Why are you still dragging off, the same kind of people we would always remove, but at a lower number, and then to pad your numbers, grabbing 5-year-olds with fucking cancer? I'll tell you why. Because the numbers aren't there. And from Nick Fuentes to fucking Glenn Beck, there has been this bridge across where everybody, the unspoken truth is that the deportations, the mass deportations, which was one of the singular promises that Trump made, day one, 1 million people, all that shit, it never materialized. The closest thing they've come to is saying that 1 million of these fuckers have self-deported. Well, let me see the plane tickets, asshole. And how did they buy them without ID? But whatever. Okay. The Trump administration plans to implement a process, plans to have concepts of a plan, of an implementation of a plan, of a concept of a plan, of a process of something, whereby farmers in Iowa can vouch. I swear, Your Honor, I will not work these people like slaves. And as long as you let me not pay them a living wage, I promise I will make sure that they don't commit any awful crimes. How? Oh, I'll keep them in a unventilated cabin on my property with tin walls and no air conditioning all year long. Thank you, Your Honor. can vouch for hardworking, law-abiding migrant farm workers who may be facing deportation so they can remain in the U.S. The proposed process, and by the way, this has not fucking happened, was shared by Donald Trump during an event at the Iowa State Fairgrounds on Thursday night, kicking off a year of patriotic celebrations meant to honor the nation's 250th birthday. Trump said the new plan will take place in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security if they have the funding. Thank you, Democrats, for threatening the funding for it. And that legislation for the measure is currently being drafted while speaking Thursday evening from Iowa. Real quick, it wasn't currently being drafted. It was not. It's not legislation. And no one would do this. Beyond Democrats going, this is just a fucking license for slavery, the Republicans aren't going to just go, oh yeah, whatever. Just, yeah, if you guys want to hire as many illegal workers as you want and pay them whatever the fuck you want, get at it. You know, and this was his whole statement on the thing. Quit, you stupid. I'll move this up a little bit so I can. You know, they've had people working for them for years. And we're going to do something. We're going to sort of put the farmers in charge. Trump told a crowd of people in attendance, if a farmer has been with one of these people that work so hard, they bend over all day. It sounds like the people in his cabinet. They bend over all day. We don't have too many people that can do that. But they work very hard and they know him very well. And some of the farmers are literally, you know, they cry when they see this happen. If a farmer is willing to vouch for these people in some way, Christy, I think we're going to have to just say that's going to be good, right? How many, okay, chat room, how many people think this dickhead, well, nothing came of it, obviously. So clearly the people in his administration, have like they just didn't, they're not calling anybody. They're not talking to senators about this. They're not talking to, you know, who was it? Fucking Kristi Noem, no, it wasn't Kristi Noem. It was, Joni Ernst, right? Who has values. Yeah.
Iowa values.
That's right. The Iowa values that only Iowans have.
Iowa values.
Like straight up fucking glitch saying Iowa values. I really think, quite frankly, that I don't put so much weight on the difficulty of pronouncing Iowa, which is pretty simple. I would put it on the word values freaking him out. Oh no, here I see the word values coming and it's making me throw up a little bit in my mouth. Iowa values. Oh God. Right?
Iowa values.
All right. So and obviously his stuff is going to get more unhinged and more angry and more violent and stuff as his brain is on its constant fade. There's an article this morning in the Daily Beast. Where is it? Whoops, here we go. Trump's latest Trump's latest outburst alarms doctor. I want his physicians to engage. Yeah. President Trump's recent social media post alarmed one doctor who said on Sunday that he saw it as evidence the president is suffering a common side effect of having a stroke. We've talked about this many, many times. I called it. It's nice to have Doc Adam on the show occasionally to verify what I said about his aspirin regimen, and then they find welcome. Look, I understand. I'm way ahead of it. I'm not one of these dickheads who believes in conspiracy theories because, quite frankly, most people, think something's a conspiracy theory because they don't know how anything fucking works. And if they found out how it works, it would undermine whatever shit they're selling to their supporters. I'm talking to you, Alex Jones, you dipshit. So they just pretend it's some sort of big elaborate scheme when it's really just fuckery and idiocy. Last week, Trump stayed up late into the night, firing off posts on Truth Sinkhole that ranged from attacks against his political enemies to complaints about how he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize. This is his whole thing about blaming Norway. His appearance at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he basically was falling asleep during his favorite part, the peace board, the Blue Ribbon Committee that he said was stupid when his wife was on it, but now that he's going to be the chairman of the Blue Ribbon, by the way, which is an investment opportunity for people. It's just so Jared can be in charge of billions of dollars and they can invest it until such time as it's used to build stuff in Gaza and other places. And while they're sitting on it, waiting for Hamas to disarm, waiting for the violence to stop, which never has to, they're sitting on top of billions of dollars in an account that they have total control over. And so he can invest that money or have it invested however the fuck he wants, even if it's to shore up his own goddamn loans. So the late night tirade seemed to be emblematic of someone who's suffering from agitated depression. Yes, I think you get that from seeing his poll numbers if they're showing them to him. And I don't know that they are, which is a common side effect of people who've suffered from a stroke. Yeah, agitated depression. That's like when people drink like Red Bull liquor cocktails where they're drunk and wide awake. Dr. Bruce Davidson, a professor at Washington State University's Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine, was talking on the Daily Beast podcast. He's up at night, which can worsen depression. It's common to get depression. And he's angry because he didn't get a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, here's a man who's been elected president twice and he cares about the Nobel Prize. Bob Dylan got a Nobel Prize. What's the big deal? Oh, don't shit on Bob Dylan's Nobel Prize. It was for art, right? And other things seem to get under his skin, and so it concerns me. Well, yes, nothing will ever be enough because he doesn't understand value. This is the other thing. Can we just fucking A? Can I explain something about I'm going to stand on this hill. I'm not going to die on this hill because I will be standing when the battle is done. I'm going to stand on this hill. That Donald Trump is not a narcissist. And if you want to redefine, malignant narcissism as compensatory, then you have to understand my point that he has malignant low self-esteem. He hates his own fucking reflection. He is never impressed. And no amount of flattery solves it for him. No amount of ass kissing will ever make him feel good about himself, right? Because he has never earned anything and he knows it. He's just smart enough to know how stupid he is, but not smart enough to do anything about it. To better himself, to learn, to pay attention, to listen to people who are experts in an area. It is why his health is so bad, because he does not listen to doctors. And somebody just said mommy didn't love him enough. Look, I have a rule. If you're over 30, you can't blame your parents anymore. You can recognize your parents had an impact on you. You can recognize that you didn't feel loved, and you can recognize that you have habits or a mental view that may have been crafted by people who didn't have your best interests at heart. But once your brain is fully formed and you've been alive and running around for a few years, it's on you. There's a lot of people who didn't have a mom, had a really mean mom, had a really mean dad, had a drunk dad, had a violent dad. Their father was a fucking serial killer, and they're fine. And they're not fine because it didn't impact them at the time. They're fine because they made the choice to be better in the world. And most of them didn't have the resources of a fucking millionaire. Malignant narcissism includes painfully low self-esteem that you desperately cover with bravado. Then I wouldn't call it malignant narcissism. I think that's a failure of labeling. That's like, ADHD or ADD. I got news for you, folks. You got to prove to me it's a disorder before you act like... you got to prove to me there's an order to be had before you can prove to me something's in order. Because Da Vinci had ADD, right? If you look at his notebooks. And that's because he went as far with an idea as he possibly could with the tools in front of him, and then moved on to another one because he had run aground. Sometimes you can't move any further on an idea because of technical limitations, because of environment, because you have to fucking feed yourself. There's a lot of reasons. So anyways, I have an issue with that, and I've had it for a long time. The other thing too is regarding everything as sort of a version of depression. which seems to be, in the way this guy's using it, as a catch-all phrase, right? That follows everything. Trump is not depressed. Trump is reacting. It's like not making a distinction between sorrow. I don't have post-traumatic stress disorder from the times I've given CPR, or the times that I've been in fights, or the hospicing with my dad. I have remnant post-traumatic stress that comes around. I don't view it as a disorder because it happened as part of my life. And no one can convince me that it magically just goes away in anyone. So it's not a disorder. It's just something you have to care for. It's something you have to watch in yourself, but that doesn't make it a disorder. And again, I'm not going to get into an argument about medicalizing stuff, but it seems as a way that they're excusing a lot of how he acts. He's an angry old man. That's it. He's a grown man who doesn't like what he's built around him, is never satisfied because his self-image is in direct conflict with the station he finds himself in the world, because he knows he's a fraud, which I guess if you gave a fuck would show up as depression when you compare it to somebody who's poor, who had alcoholic parents, who doesn't feel like they can get out of it, right? And their mental state mixed with their biochemistry or whatever they might be doing to compensate, whether it's drugs or alcohol or just laziness and low self-esteem, making them sit like this, compress their diaphragm, never take a deep breath. The physiological aspects of depression that chase them around, along with the history of it. When you compare someone like that in a fucking trailer park where they don't feel like they have any hope, they're looking at the world, they're looking at the limitations they have in front of them, and it's sad. That's comparing that kind of depressive feeling to Donald Trump's lack of satisfaction with being able to bullshit himself, or that the people around him will bullshit him, is aggravating. And somebody saying, Hal versus the mental health community, you have definitely earned calling yourself a narcissist. Thank you. That is a personality trait, and I will own it. Some people might call this confidence and a care for attention to fairness and detail. But if it works with narcissism, yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. I agree. That's exactly how I would describe it as well. I comedically refer to it as narcissism because I actually think narcissism is very funny. And the reason I think this is because I grew up as a huge fan of Steve Martin, and his entire comedy persona is built on false narcissism. It's a mockery of narcissism. Watch his early stand-up. Watch his character. Even the Wild and Crazy Guy brothers are narcissistic. They think they're awesome against all evidence, right? So the key here is that I refuse to let anybody let Donald Trump, a grown man in his 70s, off the hook for character traits that he has cultivated in himself that are distinctly different from a lot of people who have had a similar experience and didn't turn out that way. Choices matter. And, just like you have every cell in your body is new, I think, except your teeth, pretty sure. Every piece of soft tissue in your body is new every 7 years. There's a reason in the Bible it says 7 fat years and 7 lean years, is because that's the cycle of biology. And you can, the reason they talk about the 27 Club is because, astrological terms, it was the year of your Saturn return. Where Saturn's back in the position it was in when you were born, and therefore that's the time in your life when you spiral up or spiral down. That was the theory on it, and it's largely based on the fact that you've gone through multiple cycles of shedding your physical form. You've got brand new brain cells. The synapses are there out of habit now, not out of just like they've rotted into place. And so Trump has made these decisions over and over and over again. Why? Because they get him what he wants. That's, there's a lot of talk about like whether evil is an outdated biblical kind of a phrase about certain people, or whether it's all mental illness or whatever. And this hyper categorization of both, of it's got to be one or the other, is a little bit absurd, because there's a lot of people in the mental gray area of this that are not mentally ill and are not, religiously driven to be a fucking Satanist or something, that in the middle of it have found a way to get their biological needs met, their pleasure center kicked in, their serotonin, all this, out of being terrible to people because it worked for them. Not because it filled a hole, not because they were like, I was never loved, therefore I'll make you not feel loved. Like, I'm sure those people exist, but they're a rarity amongst awful people. Most of them are just getting their needs met. They feel powerful because they like feeling powerful, not because they're getting rid of a feeling of powerlessness. That's, I think, normal people overlaying your own decent nature onto someone else. Yeah, abusers. And that's why Trump, acts with MAGA like an abusive boyfriend in that regard. Because he knows how to corral them. It's like a pickup artist being a dick to a woman to get laid, because they know it will work with a certain category of women. So they're just walking around trying to find the one that appeals to attacks on their self-esteem. And they know they get this. So, yeah. Dr. Esiger, Hal, step off this hill. You've got it wrong. No, I don't. No, I do not. Because I am not talking about the medically diagnosable. And I am not talking about some sort of religious unfalsifiable that categorizes people. I'm talking about a distinct area in the middle of people who continually make choices because they like it. Because they gain pleasure, power, resources. It's almost if you want to chalk it up to anything biological, I think it sits more into the evolutionary makeup of certain people, just like certain chimpanzees lead the attack. How do you think November elections will happen? Yes, I do. Because of those people that I'm talking about who want their own power one day. Okay, sorry, this is not an excuse for this man, what he's doing, or an excuse. This man had to ignoring this man. Look what's happening. Citizens are being killed. Exactly. And not being killed because Donald Trump's mom didn't love him. They're being killed because Donald Trump sees this as a functional way to maintain power amongst the people that follow him. It's strategic. Even bad strategy. So, I cannot disagree with with desperate insecurity and its consequences and iteration. I would agree. And I think that's what I mean. I think we take people who have real depression, who are suffering real symptoms of depression, and our new understanding of what that means because it was blown off forever. And now that we have a new understanding of it, we're trying to use that prism to look through at everyone. And it doesn't fit, especially in the case of people who are, like dictators and people like that. The idea that they might be a sociopath may be true, but the idea that sociopathy comes from some sort of chip that's missing in their brain, and not that you can get your needs met through awful behavior if certain things just don't matter to you because you can't figure out why they would, because it ain't you. And there were, millennia upon millennia upon millennia of animal development in us that created that, and it might just be stronger in other people. Anybody ever been, okay, this is a good example. Anybody ever been to the La Brea Tar Pits? I love the La Brea Tar Pits. Okay. First of all, love this place. My kid loved it. We go all the time. When Cam comes to LA with me, we we always go to the La Brea Tar Pits to kind of like see the old stomping grounds, because there's a little garden in the center of it that you're not supposed to run around in, and of course we ran around in it. There's a little path where the gardener goes around and fixes all the plants, and it's just kid size. So when he was a toddler, he would just, and a little kid when he was like 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, he would run around in there and play in the area. It was awesome. Anyways, they play a movie at the La Brea Tar Pits, and we go see it every time, even though we've seen it over and over again. And Christopher Plummer is the voiceover on it, rest his soul. And it's very good, and it's early, like 2000 CGI and shit like that. But one of the things that they show is the, first of all, I would like to say, in alignment with my dickish attention to detail, it's technically the La Brea asphalt pits. Tar is made, asphalt is natural. And so they point that out occasionally when you're there, but we call it the tar pits because it looks like tar to us. Because modern people's experience with that kind of goop has been tar, especially from roads and the like. It's black, it oozes, you use it as an emulsifier for gravel and shit to put together streets. So we call it tar, and roofing, that kind of stuff. But it's really asphalt. Anyway, so they have a thing about the Smilodon californicus, which is the what we refer to as the saber-toothed tiger, which is not a tiger, it's a lion technically. There's the good old dire wolves. They have hundreds of dire wolf skulls there because that's the biggest thing they found, because there were super packs of dire wolves, which must have been fucking terrifying. Okay, so here's the cats. There he is. That's definitely a saber-toothed cat. And the reason they call it that is because it's not a lion. It's a... Anyways, they bring out this dude in a suit, which is really fun. And then in the 3D theater, they play this movie. This is what it is. Okay, and one of it shows a bunch of dire wolves eating on a carcass of a horse. I think it was something that looked like a horse. It's more like whatever the indigenous antelope. There were no horses in North America, but an equivalent, carcass. And they're, the wolves are gnawing at it. And then 3 saber-toothed cats roll up and drive them off and eat the carcass themselves. And then they eat one of the dogs. They eat one of the dire wolves as well, because it couldn't get away fast enough. And then it's pretty gruesome, but it's especially for a kid. It's one of the reasons I think my son liked it. But you watch them eat it. And there's a dominant cat that eats first. Usually eats the liver, the most nutrient-dense part of an animal, and then the rest of them are gnaw on the sinew, right? But there's a distinct thing where, like, when one of them tries to move in, it pushes them away. This is a natural evolutionary response to limited resources, or the belief in limited resources. In our case, and in many cases, whether it is food, shelter, if you're homesteading and you're going to drive people off your land, or food, or sex rather. And the idea that the idea that we're somehow not prone to that in any way, that we're devoid of that, even genetically on some level, that people have a more of a. It's why we have to civilize everybody. Right? Humans didn't create civilization. It was we civilized ourselves so we wouldn't tear down what we started to build at one point. Trump thinks he's an alpha. Trump is convinced he's not and is afraid people will find out. But he needs people to think he's an alpha. He needs to be scary or superior, otherwise they will come for him. And old monkeys tend to get really loud and mean. You watch anything on Jane Goodall does on gorillas and chimpanzees, and how the aging head of the tribe, right? So what I'm saying is civilize Trump first. Well, that's exactly it. We're regressing. I don't think we are. I really don't. As a matter of fact, people are counting on civilization more often than they ever have. They're expecting it. That's the problem Trump has with his own supporters. That's why his numbers are so low. But in this particular instance, where the doctors are talking about him, a lot of this doesn't have to do with some sort of character trait he has, but the fact that his brain is failing And the entire architecture of his personality is based on superiority. And I would argue that this is out of the fact that that served his needs for decades. There's a point where it won't. There's a point where the personality you build as your power structure may cease to serve you in this life, especially when it requires might on your part and you run out of that ability. If the only reason you were in charge in the old lodge was because you could beat up everybody, there's a shelf life on that. There's limited runway on your ability in that regard. It's why male ape voices get louder. It's why male singers become golden voices, and it's easier to maintain sometimes male singers get better with age. And the reason that is because our vocal system is, when I start to lose my ability to knock the shit out of you, if you're still scared of how loud I can get, that's an illusion. That gives me the illusion of vigor for anybody who might want to knock me off, my throne, right? A physician has three primary responsibilities. The first is relief of suffering. Agreed. Second, prevent disability. And the third priority is postpone death. I would argue that the postponing of death is in the first two. That's the whole purpose of the relief of the suffering and the prevent disability. Although I get will shorten their life in theory. Okay, so, but that's what we're supposed to do. Good point. When I see you can tell I'm in a nitpicky mood this morning. Hi there. I think it's the beard. I gotta get myself some round glasses. I have my little spoof glass. My mom left her reading glasses, so I was like, I should probably do a show like this, and then everybody would take me a lot more seriously. If you guys, good Lord, I really barely do anything. But all I got to do for a lot of people, I'll show you how this works. All I got to do for a lot of people, and you'll see this a lot, is look over the top of your glasses at someone like this. Especially if they don't work with sunglasses because you look like an asshole. But with reading glasses, you'd be amazed how powerful this can be. All right. I've been on the receiving end of it because I don't wear glasses, but I'm like, ooh, I guess you must be very smart. When I see the president appearing like a patient having trouble, I want his physicians to engage, and this illustrates, I regret to say, a terrible increasing weakness in American medical leadership. Technically speaking, his physicians have a weird mandate to support the president. And he decides what that is, which is, in most cases, like with Biden or even with Kennedy, where he was getting treatments, or Roosevelt, are sort of, or I guess H.W. Bush was famously on Haldol. I had a joke back in the day. It was about, that sounds like a little toy you get, and you pull the string and it goes, I'm out, Sparks, and I'm mad. But this is less about the leadership in America of the physicians, and just quite frankly, the ever tightening access that they have around him. If Trump was a horse, it would drown in water. I used to do that as a teacher, but my students would laugh. All right. Haldol, that's right. Get one for Christmas. Heads cut off of that. I don't think so. I think that's your framing. It should be all right. They're probably attacking me. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't stop it from being a dumbass. That's an excellent point. Oh dear, Diana, please evacuate to some point safe. The fire alarm is going off. That's not good. His biography is interesting. It was written shortly after he got started. It was like 12 stepping. It was like, whose was Nina? I didn't see that, who it was related to. Can we talk about Congress? Sure, absolutely. But I want to address why Trump wants this violence. That's a crucial part of this. Is that it provides him with a sense of power. The problem is that he's got a habitual problem with women in power specifically, and I do not think this relates to his mom not loving him or any of that kind of shit. I think it's because of the sexist nature of the people he grew up around and was drawn to. Because I got news for you. In the 80s, there were a lot of women-forward men working all over the place. it wasn't. I mean, I'm sure that the old guard was still there, but it wasn't the fucking Mad Men 1960s. And so you know, usually the guys who were mad at women for not sleeping with them for any other reason than that they had money, like Donald Trump, they're the ones who were like these bitches, right? But the rest of the men at the time or whatever, you know, this was the time to start looking for a woman who was, you know, active and smart and forward thinking and all that kind of stuff. And speaking from my own sort of upbringing, that was key to the women that were in movies. That was key. You know, there was a lot less damsel in distress, and even in the situation where the man had to save the woman with his physical prowess, the woman was not written off as kind of a bimbo that was like shrieking in a corner like it was an old horror film where women just automatically go into panic mode. It changed, right? And this was during a time when he was sort of rising up. And I think he saw women more as potential opponents in the economic realm than if he wanted, you know, then he feared them because, I don't know, women can't be trusted or they're stupid or something. I'm sure he still thinks that too. But partly it's because he knows he's stupid and he's like, oh dear, I'll be outrun by a stupid woman. Something like that. But he sent Homan into Minneapolis because she's shitting the bed, which she was hired to do. Let's be honest. We talk about here a lot the subset of a subset of a subset of people where you're always dealing with a narrow version of humanity, and broadening your experience of human beings is always a good thing, even when they suck, as long as you do it safely. And so Trump has surrounded himself with sycophants and nuts, and there's a reason why he's, you know, he hires ineffective people. And even in the case of like Homan, who was initially, you know, when he's not making decisions, could have been good at executing things. But once he's the guy who makes the decision that will be executed, he's fucking terrible at it because he's myopic and a little dense, to say the least. That's what, and he's, you know, I guess Trump thinks of him as a formidable person. Whereas he actually wants to throw women to the wolves. He also, one of the reasons, like I've said for a long time, that if Trump wants a cabinet to fail, and if they want to get rid of something like the Department of Education or something like that, he'll put a woman in charge because he wants it to not. It's an exaggeration of that old GOP thing of, you know, government can't do anything right, elect me and I'll prove it. Trump wants to sabotage them, and his idiot, sexist, grotesque is, you know, he's a lying, egotistical, sexist, hypocritical bigot. And so he thinks if I put a woman in charge of this, not only will it fail automatically because women don't know how to do anything, but also my people will know that that's a sign that I'm planning on shelving this thing. This is about him going into polls showing that Americans are increasingly turning on ICE. You think? And Noam facing internal dissent over a response to the shooting of Veterans Affairs nurse Alex Preddy. The president announced on Monday that Tom Homan would be sent to Minneapolis in a bid to de-escalate tensions. Yeah, brilliant. That'll work. How about this? How about you guys take a page out of what we've said to Russia for a long time and get the fuck out? I got to restate this over and over again. But the Biden administration, the Obama administration managed to go after, you know, evil, criminal, you know, crazy, dangerous, rapey, fucking illegal immigrants without ever having to march, you know, troops down the streets of American cities. They managed to do it. And the idea that, you know, well, they missed some and therefore they're responsible for an open border policy, which is garbage. And the fact when Trump misses some, it's because that person got in before I was here and therefore the guy never would have gotten in or some shit like that. When Trump gave, say, the shooter in DC asylum, I thought they vetted him. Like, why would you think that? If you think that Biden is the dumbest president that's ever been and he had an open door policy and that's what he wanted, then why would you just assume asylum claims based on their vetting, period? Well, you wouldn't. He's just too lazy to do any of the work. That's the reality of it. He auto-penned that guy's asylum claim. Guarantee it, if he had any play in it at all. So, in this particular instance, let me scroll this down. The move is significant considering that Noam has previously been at odds with Homan. And again, because they're jockeying for a power position, not because they want to do the fucking job. So Homan, who prioritized the deportation of the worst, criminals and gang members. In contrast, insiders say Noam, nicknamed Ice Barbie for her love of cosplaying, wanted broader public roundups and the theatrics of promoting them, often bypassing Homan in the process. Which I guess would have worked if they existed. The reason Homan bucked her was not because he wouldn't want the same thing. He talked about it in all these gatherings. It's the reason he did it, hasn't done these big roundups, is because you can't. For fuck's sake. There aren't millions and millions and millions of dangerous illegals in the fucking country. There just aren't. As a matter of fact, the number of illegal immigrants in the country has maintained at about 11 million forever. We're at like 10.43 or some shit right now at last count. And the idea that there are 35 million more on top of that, they would be impossible not to see. Yeah. So anyway, like, just fucking aggravating. And this and her fucking, like, this is her and Kash Patel. They're the same person. Tensions escalated in Minneapolis over the weekend after Preddy, 37, was shot by federal agents after he filmed an immigration operation on his phone. Noam, alongside Customs and Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino, sought to justify the shooting as an act of self-defense and painted Preddy as a domestic terrorist intent on harming law enforcement. Because they have to, because they know they were wrong. This is a violent riot when you have someone showing up with weapons and using them to assault law enforcement officers. He did no such thing. This is Alex Preddy. There's a memorial to him there. The claim came despite multiple videos directly contradicting her version of events, I would say. I'm going to editorialize the Daily Beast right now. Calling bullshit on her exclamation, her ignorant exclamation. That's not even fair either, because I think she knew. I think this is active bullshittery. And the fact that Preddy had a permit to carry a gun. Now, this is the biggest problem that Republicans have among the MAGA tree. And my job these days, as you guys know, is to point out the wedges that are happening between Trump and MAGA and in between MAGA and each other, and disavow everyone of this illusion that they're an they're a permanent force that is impervious to, like how I mix those words together, so that, like, there's nothing we can do about it. He's going to cancel the elections. The maggots love this. They're all on board. There's a percentage of them that will always show up. They'll show up at voting places and stand outside with guns and only allow people they recognize to vote, shit like that. And this illusion, scares it doesn't scare most people on our side away from voting and this kind of stuff. But there's a percentage that they're counting on, 3% of voters being worried or scared, or they don't want to show up either because they're afraid they're going to be racially profiled by Trump's, Gestapo, as people are calling it, right? This is part of the strategy. And my point is, do not be afraid. Do not let them drive that fear, because you might not feel it. You might feel driven, but you're a subset of a subset watching my show. And what you pass on to other people in terms of how you interpret or talk about these kind of things will have an impact on them. And know your audience is clear. It's an important part of this. So, this is the other thing. Notably, in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Trump refused to back Noam's claim that Preddy's shooting was justified, repeatedly declining to say if the agent who killed him had done the right thing. His decision to send in Homan came as internal dissent over DHS's messaging is reportedly boiling over. Fox News reporter Bill Mellion said he had spoken to more than half a dozen federal immigration officers who saw DHS's messaging as a case study in how not to do crisis PR. According to CNN, multiple DHS insiders were also furious after watching bystander footage of the shooting, saying Noam's public statements no longer match what Americans can see themselves. One official told the network the department needs a law enforcement leader, not a sycophant. And they'll call that person a deep state operative or an unnamed source, but it's patently obvious to anybody who's paying attention. Despite the well-known tension between Trump's Homeland Security Secretary and his border czar, Noam took to social media on Monday to welcome the decision. Of course, what's she gonna fucking do? What's she gonna do? Buck what Trump did? It's the only job description she has. She's not there to actually make real decisions. She's meant to be the Caroline Leavitt of this policy. Just stupid. And this one, of course, jumping into it is equally as stupid. Attorney General Pam Bondi has demanded that Minnesota's governor hand over the state's voter rolls in exchange for federal help after another U.S. citizen was killed by federal immigration agents. Like, this is some goofy shit, and it's patently obvious and transparent to everybody who's watching. So this is having an impact. They do have the same jacket. You're right. They do wear the same jacket. Substituting the mumbling thumb for the evil gnome isn't going to help the situation. No, it is not at all. And I got to tell you, you want a crowbar moment? It's the fact that they killed a guy with a license to carry who told the police he had a gun on him himself, and another officer took it away. Because you want a Ruby Ridge moment that turns this crowd on Trump? This is it. This is one of them. And he has to be reminded on regularly. Texas gave their voter registration information to Trump. Yeah. Also, by the way, that isn't going to do shit. Because they're not going to find a bunch of people. They're going to, they regularly expunge people from the voter rolls if they haven't voted in 2 elections or if they're dead or whatever. But one thing about dead people being on your voter rolls is that they don't show up to vote. And if they do, there's a little checklist everybody signs when you show up to vote. They don't just herd people in, just walk to a booth, do what you want to do. You come over, you tell them who you are. You don't have to show ID, but you tell them who you are, and then you do this. If there was a big barrage in 2020 and 2024 and any of these elections where there were a bunch of dead people who had voted, it would show. You can check the voter rolls, and you can check them against the dead people, and it never checks out the way they say. It's always that there are dead people on voter rolls, and they don't show up because they're fucking dead. Yeah, after they killed him, one agent is searching him and yells, "Where's the gun?" and points across the street to the guy saying he has it. Yeah, because you can see the guy remove the gun. Fuck, some of these guys in this tussle, this unnecessary tussle, I would argue, on so many fronts, could have seen a gun that belonged to one of the other cops. Obviously, they had guns drawn. So, what did the horrible woman Dana Loesch say about it? She was big NRA. Well, we'll see. You showed ID to register. That's exactly right, Sheila. And you also signed an affidavit that's punishable by 5 years in jail for every count that you're involved. If you vote in a primary, if you receive a mail-in ballot, that's illegal. You can get 15 fucking years for faking, your right to vote. Nobody's going to do it. Who the fuck is going to take $50 from the DNC to lie and vote for as a dead person in something and I'm trying to think about it. I think homeless people. There's an argument you could make that somebody could just stumble in who's homeless and go. Somebody gave him $50, right? Yeah. Trump talks to death about rigged election 2020. Biden had and got the most votes. Don't let Trump win the argument. I completely agree. But let's say you could pay a homeless person to pretend they're somebody that you know is not going to show up, which is also fucking be weird. You would for $50K. It wouldn't be worth it, Strahd. They would be able to trace that amount of money. Literally, the only way this works is if you're handing out a little bit of cash that's untraceable somehow to a bunch of people. Well, there aren't enough homeless people in the fucking country to sway the election. If all of them voted one direction. How many bullets does it take to stop someone? As many as they have until the person stops. That's the training. You know why? Because dozens of cops are dead because they shot someone, the person fell, they thought the person was down, they started tending to another officer that was wounded in the exchange and got killed themselves. So police are trained, if someone is a genuine threat, to shoot until they stop moving, until the threat is completely gone because of experience. This idea that you're one-shotting somebody from far away, unless it's a fucking SWAT sniper, is out of the question. That's just the truth. That's just reality. It's the same as in a self-defense situation. Included in the training, yes. If someone comes into your home and they mean to do you harm, you make a decision with every trigger pull that you will have to justify. But the justification is they were continuing to either move forward or move at all until such time, they could have gotten up. It was under my estimation. They could have gotten up and done something, period, while I was tending to my family. Therefore, that's it. That's the rule. And those guys aren't cops. That's also an excellent point. Because ICE should be accompanied by local law enforcement. And anytime there's a wedge between them, it's for a reason. With cryptocurrency, bribes will be untraceable, a big advantage for MAGA. I agree, but crypto's taken a giant shit lately. What proof would the person paying a homeless guy get their vote the way they wanted? I completely agree. Right. That's why it's a stupid plan. That's why it doesn't happen. That's why we don't have massive amounts of voter fraud in this country. And whenever we discover it, what is it? It's some woman who got out of prison and thought that she had the right to vote and voted mistakenly. Let's say in terms of the one Biden voter that they trot out, right? She thought she'd served her time and was allowed to vote. She registered. She was allowed to register. She was on the rolls when she showed up. She signed her name on the little list. She went in and voted. Why wouldn't she think it was fine? Thank you, Jeanette. I don't care. It's okay. So I never presented myself as a doctor. This is my highly considered opinion. How about that? Goddamn Queensryche Rage for Order turns 40 this June. And right around screaming in digital is never more relevant. Just saying. So yeah, that was one that, Crystal Mason. We got 5 years. And she didn't vote fraudulently. She thought she had the right to. Meanwhile, what do you find in terms of Trump voters? People in the fucking villages in Florida voting 4 times a piece. Actual fraud. Aware, functional, strategic, planned fraud. That took work. A lot of work. It's, as a matter of fact, it is singularly the place you would point to if you were saying, what's the problem with certain fraud in certain states? You'd go, well, obviously there's something fucked up in the villages. The major is not on today. It's just us for the next 13 minutes. It's just you and me. He's normally on Wednesday mornings in the early slot and stuff, but he's campaigning and doing all kinds of stuff. And I will be in Chicago on Friday afternoon show. There'll be a morning show on Friday, but not an afternoon show because I'm flying out to go do the Indivisible thing. And because of weather and stuff, I don't want to take a red eye and not make radio on Saturday for the Saturday gig. So just as a heads up. How Utah found only one non-citizen on the state's voter rolls, and that person never voted. Exactly. And probably that person tried to just thought they had to fill out every form that was in front of them. Also, people in the villages have a lot of sexual disease. Well, that's an old folks' home thing. That's true of like this rampant venereal disease in old folks' homes because they still got it. They still got it. Yeah. Let's see. Trump keeps pardoning all the white people committed PPP loan fraud. Well, except for Marjorie Taylor Greene. How many of you think that if we take the House and the Senate and we start looking into PPP loan fraud and some of it goes Marjorie Taylor Greene's way, you think Trump's going to pardon her now? I don't think so. I don't think so. So, you've never heard that about nursing homes? Really? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very much a regular thing. Okay, so there are members of the Senate who are talking about not okaying funding for DHS until such time as Noam steps down. Yeah, and this is all. I'm going to try to bring this up for you. Yeah, here it is. Dems are going to block funding for the funding package if it includes Homeland Security money. Announcement comes after announcement comes after anger towards DJ. Okay, whatever. Misspelled on even The Guardian. Yeah, which oversees ICE intensifies after. I see. Their spot. Okay, there. This is not a paywall. Yes, it is. Go away. In the wake of yet another fatal shooting, U.S. citizen in Minnesota the Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said his party would block a funding package next week if it includes money for the DHS. The announcement, which dramatically escalates the potential for another partial government shutdown, comes as anger towards Homeland Security, which oversees ICE, intensifies among the party after a group of federal agents violently restrained and then fatally shot 37-year-old ICU nurse Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. What's happening in Minneapolis is appalling and unacceptable in any American city. Democrats sought common sense reforms in the Department of Homeland Security spending bill, but because of Republicans' refusal to stand up to President Trump, the DHS bill is woefully inadequate to rein in the abuses of ICE. I will vote no. Senate Democrats will not provide the votes to proceed to the appropriations bill if the DHS funding bill is included. Because they have another one that puts in reforms like body cams and shit like that. This is what the Democrats want to do. And again, we can talk up and down about how awful ICE is, but you notice that conversation didn't happen while Biden and Obama were president because it matters who runs things. It matters who's in charge. It matters that you have people that give a shit. And this idea that ICE would be doing this anyways if Kamala Harris was in or if Jimmy Carter was still president is fucking lame. Voting is our only solution in this current circumstance because Democrats are outnumbered in the House and in the Senate. Now, in the House, that number might be changing soon. There's literally a one-vote majority to pass stuff in the House. And if any of them get sick, leave, get arrested for something sketchy, which they increasingly are, or step down before they get arrested for something sketchy, between now and the midterms, there will be a vote for Democrats to control the House, and then the Democrats can use that, I think, if they're able to, gain the leadership position because of something like that, which is, it's definitely an outlier in the chance that it's happening. But were it to happen, it would be a great opportunity for Democrats to be able to flex some muscle. Until then, they cannot. There are things they can hold up in the Senate, and there are things in the House that require a bunch of Massey types to stay on board to vote for a bunch of stuff, which the giveaways would have to be so extraordinary because of the Epstein stuff that I don't see that happening. So right now, basically the House is stalled, which is good compared to what we had before. But it will not in any way change the circumstance within the DHS and how ICE is handling things and lower the chance of someone else getting killed like this until Democrats control the House and the Senate and ultimately the White House. There, and even the Democrats you hated, whether it was, even cinema, like this would have passed. These restraints on DHS and ICE, the insistence on body cams, the training time being stretched back out, because Trump lowered the training time. I don't know if you guys saw this too. Trump lowered the training time for new agents to 47 days, because 47. It used to be 90 days, basically 3 months of training before you could move from one law enforcement group to ICE. Now it's 47 days, which, of course, if we know anything about the leadership, is just like, bruh, let's go, bruh, for 47 days. Just like, it's going to be awesome. We're going to fuck them up. Like, the idea that they're sitting in a class learning what their limitations are under the law is stupid. Yeah. It's Minnesota doesn't have any more time or patience. Yeah. Sorry, the Democrats are compromised. No, they're not. No, they are not. Until you can deal with the majority in the House and the Senate, the idea that you can, and by the way, that doesn't just, eliminating Republican power in the House and the Senate does not just keep them from doing it, but it also, if there are any Democrats you think are on the fence or aren't completely bought in or any of that stuff, or you don't think they're sufficiently loyal to the party or whatever fucking CCP language gets bandied about, if you have anybody who you even think, Fetterman, back in the day with Joe Manchin, the Blue Dogs and stuff, you know where that wobbly knee aspect of them goes the minute the party has 60 votes? You think they start dragging their feet then? Or do you start recognizing that they're in a purple state, like Pennsylvania? Or Arizona, for that matter. It's one of the reasons why I think Mark Kelly is particularly great, because he doesn't act like he's in a purple state, which is terrific. What about the 7 Dems that voted for more ICE funding? I'll cover their votes in a second. One of the reasons they're voting for it is because they can be voted out and replaced by a Republican in their state. That's why. If they don't vote for ICE funding and then suddenly something goes wrong, there's another Laken Riley. All it takes is one. And that will be used against them, and a Republican will be in their seat. And that person will vote for everything. If you want those people to feel confident in their vote to vote against this or stick with Schumer and the leadership and all that kind of stuff, you can't let it be a coin toss as far as who's in the House and in the Senate, or flippantly go, I don't know if I feel motivated to blah, blah, blah. Right? Let's say this. You're a Democrat and you're in a purple state, or you're in a state that has had Republican leadership before, including California. And the voter base you are dealing with, the people who will show up not at your primary, but at the actual polls in the fall, will have this on their mind. And whether it's a PR push, it's like the old thing where they put like school lunches in a bill that makes you sign off on a bunch of military spending. Otherwise, these kids will go hungry, and you're worried that the voters themselves aren't going to remember that you were trying to stop some sort of military funding that they care about. They're going to hear the school lunches thing and go, that was separate. Why would you do such a thing? That's the voter base that they're operating with. So if they defund ICE, again, and it doesn't, the funding itself, ultimately it's the leadership that's the problem. And the voters put those leaders in charge last time, both in the House and the Senate and in the presidency. You're so tired of appeasing Republicans? Well, then vote. Because that's the way people appease Republicans. By not voting, being wishy-washy in their vote, or not voting for the Democrat that's in their actual state. People will not vote for the Democrat in their state because they don't like Fetterman or Manchin. For real. That's the problem. That is almost singularly the problem with Democratic voters right now. Because some other Democrat somewhere else wasn't aligning 100%. So you'll not show up to vote in fucking like Michigan because you don't like the senator in Pennsylvania. That's what we had last time. And those ones that are on the fence or whatever, it's because their voters are on the fence. So our job becomes convince those voters. The votes of the people in the Senate especially are symptoms. The diseases, both ignorance and fear, and the acquiescence, the complying in advance to Donald Trump's sales pitch. And if you did vote and always do, keep at it. I'm not talking to you. I'm not chiding you at all. That's the key. Because, until there's a big push, until we have 60 votes in the Senate, for example, most of the biggest Democratic priorities aren't going to make it through. Because we'll have to overrule Rand Paul and other people who just want to shut shit down. That's got to be the goal. Yeah, Republicans' favorite tool, Dems dissing Dems is not good enough. Agreed. Also, if diversity is our strength, get used to the idea that you're not going to have everybody in lockstep. So that means your ability to convince people and your ability to push for what you want matters more. But again, the biggest voter problem we have had, statistically, I would argue, in the swing states especially, is swing state Democrats not having a problem with who's even running in their state, but laying back because they don't like how Kristen Sinema was acting. It's not even their fucking state. They have no control over that. It is outside their locus of control. And yet, they are using it as evidence to affect their vote in their state. That's the crucial part. And until people get over that, Republicans are never going to fear Democratic voters as a base. Until we reach that point where people show up, for the person that's in their state, not, feeling like they're holding their breath because of something happening in another state. Or even allowing for the false equivalency between, Trump, Kamala Harris, it's a fucking coin flip. We'd be sending fucking, an armada to Venezuela if Harris had been elected. We'd have soldiers in the fucking street shooting people if Harris had been elected. It's absurd. But 6 million of our voters stood down. Why? Because of Cuomo and Fetterman and stuff that didn't even happen in their fucking state. That's why. If every Democratic voter in this country, everyone who leans Democratic as an independent or who's a Democrat or views themselves in line with what the Democratic Party is trying to do, voted in every election, you would be shocked at the number of red states that immediately went straight through purple to blue. Because they're all 3 houses down from each other going, well, it doesn't matter anyways, I live in a red district. They have no idea how many people in their district would vote blue, but they all think the same thing. How about that's TYT and Hassan's garbage, 1 House rep and 1 senator does not final voter party make. Exactly. But that's why, and I have to remind everybody, that's the actual reasoning behind TYT. That's their, and Hassan's job. That's what they wouldn't be able to bullshit you if they didn't say 80% of the things you want to hear. But that extra 20% about America had it coming and it's best to let it fail and Democrats don't do anything and all that kind of horse shit, that's their real purpose. 20% of what they say creates 80% of the action that happens on their behalf. And 80% of what they say has 20%. So 80% of the viewers of, of TYT are demoralized and don't vote. That's the whole fucking point. That's the reason that show exists. It's the reason it got millionaire backing when it started. And don't let anybody on, an incorporated channel that has a deal with fucking Google to get their show automatically pushed to the front of the line to tell you anything about fucking corporate America and corporate in the upper 1%. They're fucking millionaires. B, they had corporate backing before they got started. They are a corporation. They are incorporated. They are a business. They run like a business. And they make more money when they're out of power. That's one of the things that MAGA is having to deal with sometimes, is that they do a lot better. There's a lot more viewership and fervent shit. That's why Trump has to basically do multiple daily press conferences to keep chucking red meat at these dipshits. Because the party out of power is usually the one where the media, on their side, gets its footing. But Atlanta apologized. Get the fuck out of here. She has to. You know why? Yes, and she also works on PBD's show as well. Also incorporated. Also a corporate structure. Dude's a fucking, real estate and land investor and all that kind of stuff. So everything he says has to be seen through the lens of that. I'm just a comedian who gives a shit. I'm an actor who does the roles that I do because they either entertain and bring joy to people's lives, or they have a deeper meaning, or hopefully both. I'm a musician because I love the feeling of playing and performing music, and I love the reaction that the audience gets from hearing it and feeling it and experiencing, and seeing that excitement and joy and fun in their faces when I'm doing it. Not because it's about me, but because that's an amazing gift to give. That's why I don't believe in tough crowds. You guys have heard me say this before. I don't believe in tough crowds. Tough crowd is the one that needs to laugh more than anybody. They deserve to laugh. They're the ones who work the hardest. They're the ones who got to the late show because they got off work late and they're exhausted and they need a laugh just because their life is fucking, there's a bunch of snags, and they're beyond hope that they can go someplace and someone will make them laugh in the middle of all this shit. Do you understand how art is a calling in this situation and not just some sort of fucking ego grab? Honestly, and you guys have seen me, those who've seen me live and all this stuff, I don't need you to like me even to perform well for you, because I think you deserve it. That's the point, to me anyways. Maybe it's not for other people, but that's how I genuinely feel about art. Is that at its root, it's all about understanding. And understanding the hardships and heartbreak and suffering that people go through, and that and a sense of optimism by watching it and looking deeper at it, we can stare at it and come away with a new understanding. And at the root, understanding is really what acting is about. Helping someone understand a person by portraying that person. It's also why I will here's another hill I will stand on. You're welcome. That anybody who says it's more fun playing villains has never played a real villain. How do you like them apples? If an actor ever says to me it's more fun playing the villain, then to me you're just telling me you played a cartoon character. And that your writers don't know how to write heroes. Eat that, Hollywood. That's the truth. If you really played a villain, it would fucking suck. If you're not one yourself, I guess. Maybe that's the only exception, is playing villain's fun. Why? Just get to be myself. How about JR on Dallas? Again, I don't know that he was the villain. They had other villains. He was like the anti-hero in that series. Even then, still stupid. And it's not fun. It wasn't I mean, I'm sure there were people on that show that had more fun doing their job. So there. Boss Hogg was a supervillain. Well, that's a great example. If you're playing Boss Hogg and you're playing the villain, you're playing a cartoon character and it's silly. Cindy, Nerd Halen shows the most fun I've had since COVID, which is entirely the point. I literally did not need to be convinced to join Nerd Halen when Caleb asked because I knew people needed it. He was a jerk, yes, but that's not the same as a villain. Not really. You're not playing a real villain. You're playing a foil, for lack of a better word. Heath Ledger would attest. I agree. How ICE is pulling fire alarms in apartment buildings to get people to come out of the building. I'm not surprised at any of this. The tactics, fish rots from the head. The tactics that ICE is using that they learned in 47 days under 47 are directly the response of the Republican Party feeling completely unleashed. And until the only way you're ever going to put a leash on them ever again is to vote them out. Democrats and independent-leaning Democrats, those are your choices. Whichever one can win and not one that is your utopian ideal. That's the reality of it. Because the rest, if you're in an area where they wouldn't take on an AOC or a Ron Wyden or something like that, if you're in a district that won't elect somebody like that, then you have to come to terms with that fact and vote the best possible person that you can under those circumstances, because the rest of the voters around you are not on board. But if they're on board with somebody who's, pretty reasonable, but is definitely a Democrat and would vote with the party in that regard, then that's who has to have your vote. And there's no reason to feel muted or upset or whatever, because it's the other voters in your area that you are either, sharing a choice with or pushing against their choice. Other than that, I have no opinion. Today zipped by. I even went over. Hal, what about these assholes saying both parties are the same and now claiming VP Harris would have done this evil too? They're either, I'll tell you, they're either directly working as propagandists for the Republican Party, or they know they're being stupid and they have to excuse themselves for voting for Trump. Because what would be one of your best psychological defenses when you're seeing Trump do all this un-American shit that you claimed he would never do, that he was the perfect solution to a lot of these problems, and somebody walks up and you go, you do realize you're an asshole, right? You do realize you're fucking stupid. Your only defense is, well, they all would have done it. I mean, yeah, he's doing it and I don't like it, but it would have happened anyways because the deep state really runs things. That's where that defense comes from. You can't let him get away with it. Don't. Go, no. No, there is no way. Biden didn't run ICE this way. Obama didn't run ICE this way. And there was no need to. Obama and Biden's numbers for deportations were higher than Trump's. And then drop this egg on their doorstep. There aren't 35 million more illegals in the country. End of conversation. There aren't. He's lying to you to distract you from the Epstein files. His best friend. He was his wingman for years. He thought he was a lot of fun to be with. Would you have ever, after 20 years of hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, said he was a lot of fun to be with? You, not the party, not the deep state, not anybody. Ask any of these assholes. If you were friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 20 fucking years and somebody asked you what he was like, would you have said he's a lot of fun to be with? You're fucking kidding me, right? Maggots. I know we occasionally have one in here. Even occasionally posing as a faux aggressive, Answer me. How long would it have taken you to figure out Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile? And how long before you would have told somebody? And they'll all tell you, 5 seconds, 10 minutes. I'd have known in a day. Trump was friends with him for a quarter fucking century. And whether they say they know it, whether they admit to knowing that, I got news for you. They know it. It's like it's like an RFK brainworm jiggling around in their fucking dome, whispering at them like Jiminy Cricket. Like, dude, he really was friends with this fucking guy. I mean, really, they were really close. Like, he was impressed by this dude. He invited him as the only other guest at a party with women. Like, how do you not know? Well, you can't not know. So he had to have known. Like that, there's part of their brain that is saying this. Even if they're living in denial, they still have it there. And again, crowbar moment, it is your job. Like between now and the election cycle to go, there is no fucking way Trump didn't know. What did the president know and when did he know it? He knew in 1987 that Epstein was a fucking pedophile, and he hung out with him for another 22 years. Period. So that is probably the biggest wedge you can bring, because they fight it. You see them fighting it all the time. They try to dismiss it, but all over MAGA, there's this, you see it again and again. They're like, I can't fucking square this shit. Tucker Carlson and Glenn Beck can't even say fucking Trump's name when they're talking about Epstein. Do you understand that? They can't even say his name. That's because they know. They know that's one of those little hair switches that you open it and you touch it and it just pops open and all the shit pours out. They know it. And so it is our responsibility to remind them of this all the time. You want this shit with ICE to end? It's going to take voters. And if you want, we don't need them to see the light. We just need them to see the lie. Whatever Democrat can win the election in your state is the one you vote for. Period. And if you don't like them and you think the establishment muscled somebody out or whatever, blah, blah, vote for that person anyways. And then when we have 60 votes in the Senate, 62, I would say, we need 2 extra just for safety. You know what I mean? And we have 60% of the House, then you can start fucking needling people out. I'm all for purity tests once we have a majority, an insurmountable majority. But until that time, beggars can't be choosers and lives are on the line. People died because people sat at home and believed that genocide Joe horseshit and thought that Donald Trump would be better for Gaza. That was their single issue in some cases. He talked shit about trans people and gay people and women and immigrants, and they shrugged it off. 6 million of them shrugged it off. And they either have to, they can never vote that direction, but if they're ever going to vote again, they need to have a dose of reality. Lives are on the line. And the reason I'm not going to get caught up in the minutia of the day-to-day news cycle of how poorly, or well, I wouldn't say poorly, how specifically antithetical to American values these cabinets in the administration are being run, until people recognize that to them that's a feature, not a bug, and they're afraid that the voters are going to know it, they're not going to change anything. Trump's change from Nome to Homan in Minneapolis is a fucking PR push. Do you think the policy is going to change? You think people are less in danger of getting their lives taken by ICE agents that just took the job who have a Nazi tattoo and 47 days of training? You think that goes down anytime soon? It doesn't. But voters last time said, 6 million voters. Those people need to be shamed. And anybody who tries to like play this like two sides of a coin, uniparty horseshit on our side needs to get embarrassed in public regularly, because they bear responsibility for this as well. See you this afternoon. Hit that like, share the show. Thank you guys so much for your support.
Crooked smile. Words spill out. All venom, no style. Promises made, they rot in the air. A handshake, a lie, a blank, cold stare. Puppets dance, the strings are tight. Shadows whisper in the dead of night. This is some bullshit. We see through it. This is some bullshit. Can't undo it. Say it now. We won't quit. This is some bullshit. Paper thin truths that crumble like ash. Golden thrones built on stolen cash. We raise our fists, we break the mold. Your house of cards is getting old. Static hums, the wires ignite. Truth's a bomb, we're ready to fight.